Hey, welcome. This is episode 10 of the Executive Suite podcast. I'm so excited to have you guys here. For you guys that are just joining me for the first time, I am your girl, TeQuila Shabazz, or you can call me Mrs. Williams. I am recently married. I guess I could still claim newlywed. It's only been a month, right? I'm the outgoing bookworm of yesterday, the smart, no nonsense, and driven social entrepreneur of today, and tomorrow's billionaire boss changing the world. I am most proud of being a wife, a mother, mentor, and coach. I pour love on everything I touch and move in obedience with God's plans. And for you all that follow, I have a new baby on the way too. So I get to mold a new mind for this generation. I am the founder of Key Virtual Support Solutions, which is the fastest growing Black woman-owned staffing agency for virtual associates across the globe. We match high quality operations professionals with high achieving executives and entrepreneurs. And the Executive Suite is a space where self-made, high-achieving, high-earning women have candid conversations about real-life experiences on our way to and through success. Our purpose is not only to share our perspectives and lessons, but also to dispel some of the myths that come with the territory of being driven, ambitious, and focused, right? So we get to have a real lax conversation, something that we don't get a chance to do often. Most times when people have us on, they want to pick our brains about everything but our lessons, our life lessons, and the wisdom that we have obtained on our journey. So I am very happy to have a space with this sort of support. So I want to go ahead and introduce our first guest, or both of our guests. First one is Shanayla Sweat of A Few Wood Men, and second is Dr. Amara Enyia, long time friend and sister, honey. She do it all. Hey, ladies, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
Yes. Now look, they busy. We all busy. So when we take some time out of our Friday afternoon to meet, I am completely honored to have you guys. Thank you for making time for me. It says a lot about you. It says a lot about me. And this space has been really great with building relationships with each other and also with our audience being inspired by the stories of the women that we have on here. So there's no difference today. I don't read bios. Right? I want people to really get to know who you are through your own words. So I'm going to start the first segment, which is called The Story, right? And so I'm going to start with Shay, okay? And Shay, I just like to kick this segment off with you telling us who you were past Shay, like who you were growing up, right? Who you are now and who you are striving to be and being very intentional about being for the future. Who are you becoming? So I like to start there.
Okay, so that's a really good question. So who was Shay? So I think I've always had a split personality. I'm a Gemini as well. But I say that because it's always been a Shay and it's always been a Shanayla. And to me, they are the same person, but to others, they are two completely different individuals. And so growing up, I was Shanayla, where grew up in a Christian household, single mom. My parents divorced fairly early. My grandparents helped raise me. But I was also the oldest, and I feel like that played a lot in my ambition and drive and responsibility that I kind of uphold today. But when I was younger, I had a lot on me. So it was required that I go to college, and it was required that I did all of these things, and I took care of my siblings, and I helped the household, and did all of those things, which on one hand, it was really good in terms of me developing myself as a leader. But where I am today is really going back to discovering Shay, meaning the person who is delegating some of those tasks, who is off-putting some of those responsibilities, who is kind of shifting the foot to say, yes, I'm a leader. Yes, I'm ambitious. Yes, I'm driven, but I'm also wanting to be carefree. So that's kind of where I am now with shifting from Shanayla to Shay and really learning who that is now. It's interesting because I'm starting to even see that on my email aliases. So what I mean by that is every job or every role up until this year has always said Shanayla at. Well, what I'm doing currently is shifting a lot of those email domains to say Shay Sweat at such and such. So it's completely different. But that's really where I'm going with identifying Shanayla then and Shay today and really separating those two personalities.
Got it. Tell me a little bit about your professional background, what you do now, because you're very interesting where you have your own successful business and or businesses plural, and you also hold a very high position in corporate, right? Which
Yes.
very, very difficult to do, to juggle both of those. And when I say it, I'm talking about a 7-figure business that she has on her own, and also, being an executive with a major corporation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so my background, I actually currently work at Microsoft. I'm an organizational change manager, which means I help big corporations, tech companies, whomever navigate through change, organizational change. And so with that title, that really looks like you shifting workforces that might have 20,000 employees. It might be 40,000. Sometimes it's 100,000 people, just depending on where it is. But I help tech companies run tech companies essentially, and then I run my own tech company in the background. So what I also do is I am the CEO of A Few with Men, which is a e-commerce collection of wooden watches and accessories for men of distinction. So last year we were just short of our 7-figure mark, very, very close. And for some, like my accountants, are like, well, technically you did, but so anyways, but very, very close with hitting that 7-figure mark. And then of course this year continuously to only go onward and upward, right? So with that brand, it's been able to grow and boom. I feel like with my technical background and my background as a leader and organizer of organizations, that falls into a lot of the work that I do with A Few Men. Outside of that, I also have another brand that goes by the name of A Little Bit Techy, where I help non-technical individuals make transitions into technical roles. So I say all that to say, with every piece of the puzzle that I touch, it only takes you just making steps, right? So I'm not the smartest in the room. I never had the most resources or the most money or the most opportunities. I feel like the way and the reason that I got to where I am today and continue to strive is just because I do. And so with a lot of that philosophy, that's what I teach to those who are making those transitions. That's what I do at Microsoft currently. And that's what I definitely strive and put in place at what we do at A Few Men.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to add to that, like, the doing is very important, but also the humility of knowing you're not the smartest person in the room and placing yourself in a room with people that are a lot smarter or that know more than you and have the resources and the access. Believe it or not, a lot of people can't do that, right? And block their own success because of ego.
Right.
Right. So I really love that you said that and that you've acknowledged that about yourself, because most people cannot. So let me ask you this: with what is your current family dynamic? Are you married? Are you single? Do you have children? What's your dynamic?
I am single, so I do not have any children. I've never been married. I kind of go back and forth if I want to be married, to be honest. And I think that goes back to the trope of Shanayla versus Shay. And I say that because it was kind of ingrained in me at a young age, like, oh, you're getting married. This is for your husband. This is what you do for him. But I always had that rebellious side or that Shay side that was like, why? For what reason? Like, what am I getting out of this? And so, of course, with my upbringing, it was like, you don't ask why, it is what it is. And so I've never ascribed to that because I was like, well, no, not really. But as I've gotten older, I do kind of go back and forth because I'm like, is that desire placed there from someone else, or is it because something I really want? And it's because the reality, at least for my generation, is the landscape of dating is it's just changing. It's evolving, right? It's evolving and changing for women. It's evolving and changing for men. And so we're in this weird space of trying to figure out what that looks like, and gender roles and who's doing what and what you bring to the table. It's all of these very random conversations that are happening. And so a lot of times I go back and forth because even for myself, I'm like, yeah, I know I'll be a great wife if that is what I decide to do. But I also have the conversation with myself to be like, this is a lot more laboring than what I desire. Like, for what I'm hearing. And, I'm like, this sounds like it's a lot more work on me than it would be on you. And I don't know. So I definitely go back and forth just with that conversation with myself.
That's good. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she has been, she's an exceptional woman, right? And I find a lot of really good women that are single that struggle with this. Dr. Amara and I have had this conversation while breaking bread, right? That's why we both like giggling about it. uh, but what's interesting is I don't know if that's an American dynamic or if that is a global phenomenon
Right.
happening, right? I don't know. And the reason I say that is because she calls me up like, TeQuila, yeah, I'm going on this date. I met somebody. I'm like, yes, right? This was a big change from the last week where she's telling me about this guy who was like, I'm like, girl, I hope you know you don't got to settle. Don't settle with that, right? Because it was sounding horrible, right? So then she says, no, he's like, we court and we don't date for years and years. We know what we want right away. I'm like, where he from? She was
Right.
like, I was like, I knew it. I knew he wasn't
Right.
from here because the thought process behind
It's completely different. It's completely different. So I've had that conversation too, not to put people in a box, but I'm like, is this American men? Because I don't know what it is, but one, us all being executive driven women, it is that thing where women really are. I think what we're doing is we're catching up for opportunities that we didn't always have. But what it is coming off to some is, you know, you trying to be independent, you trying to do this, or I'm the man. And it's like, okay, you're the man, I'm the woman, but man or woman doesn't mean you lead and I can't. We should be submitting to each other. So it's just a lot of those conversations where I too wonder, I'm like, is this an American thing? Is it
is it American thing? Is it a Black American thing?
Yes.
Like are we still are these some of the repercussions of our past, and still trying to figure things out, so we're gonna talk about that more. That more when we're all conversing. But I want to close your portion out of the story with this question: how do you define success? Because that's a very subjective thing. Some people it's very money driven, it's time, freedom, that varies. So for you, how do you define success?
So success to me, I am very big on personal development. So a lot of times I journal, I write down things that happen, meaning milestones, just in terms of what I accomplished, what I didn't accomplish, how I felt. And a lot of times my success criteria is based around the evolution of me. So it's like, did my thought process change? Did I get over that hurdle? Does this still bother me? Am I still upset over this? And that really is my qualifier to success. Because honestly, money's good, all that other stuff is good, but I'm really big on, have I evolved? Have I changed? And then that lets me know I'm succeeding or I got a lot more work to do.
Yes, I love that. And just to chime in, one of our viewers said, honey, it's global. Talking about the mindset, it's not an American thing. It's a global thing. So we really gonna have to go back. I'm gonna have to visit back that CF ever segment. Okay, let's go ahead and shift. Thank you so much, Shay, for that. I'm gonna go ahead and shift gears and talk to Dr. Amara Enyia. Where you at, lady? I can't keep up.
I am actually in the U.S. at the moment in Chicago, so I'm here for now.
For now, it'd be like, where in the world is Amara, right? All over the place. She's a globe trekker. So I'm going to ask you the same questions that I asked Shay, starting with who is Amara of past, who is Amara today, and who is Amara becoming?
Yeah, and I really enjoyed listening to Shay's story. It's super inspiring, and the companies and just so I wanted to give you some flowers because it's really inspiring to me. So just my story. I mean, some of my story, but I guess for your listeners, I'll share a little bit. Amara, in the past, I grew up in a very large Igbo family. I'm one of 6. And I also have a twin sister who is my ride or die A1. In the past, I was very quiet, very studious, very mischievous. And it helps to be mischievous when you have a twin. So most of the memories that I have is really just get, exploring. We would go out. Now I think about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, for my parents, I just feel so bad how we used to do them. But my sister and I, we would go out on our bikes at 6 a.m, riding off into who knows where, to small towns, places I wouldn't even go today. We would go into the woods and find ponds and try to get in there. When we couldn't swim, we would try to make a raft and like get out on the water. I mean, we were just kind of like exploring, like we thought we were in the Goonies or something. So now, most of the memories are that my parents are very active. They have been activists for years, even before they came to the United States from Nigeria. And I always tell this story. Both of my parents fought in Nigeria's civil war, the Biafra War. They're both still very much here. They have always been about human rights, about justice. My siblings and I experienced a lot of that growing up. Both of them were involved in organizations, organizing internationally on issues of human rights, justice, governance. And so we came up in that environment a lot. So, the upbringing was great. I was, quiet, and I always had someone who could speak for me. I didn't have to talk a lot because I always have my trusty twin sidekick there to do the talking. But that was me in the past. I think in the present, one of the things that my siblings, I think, would say about me in the past that I didn't really recognize in the past about myself was that I was always sort of more prone to taking risks, being a risk taker. I was always out of the box. Whether that's defined as being sort of the odd one out, like being a little bit odd, weird, as they'll call it, willing to take risks that perhaps, other people wouldn't take. I was always kind of that way. And I think that manifests in a lot of how I live now. Just being willing to, just being very internally driven about the things that I will put my time and energy to. And two, always being committed to issues of justice and actually just wanting to actualize my potential, my purpose at whatever phase in life. And so that's where I am firmly now. And I can see where those earlier characteristics that I may not have noticed, when you're young, you don't really,
right.
We're not really introspective. But now it's quite clear. And so I'm in a place where, I'm able to utilize all of my experiences and talents and gifts in service of. And I think that's where I want to be. And moving forward, as I look ahead, I just want to continue to do that. I don't really have, a lofty set of, I'm going to do this, this, and this. My compass, my guide is always that internal, what should I be doing? And then tuning in and being able to actualize that. So that's what I foresee in the future. So we'll see how it goes.
Yes, it's been going well so far. Let's talk about, Adat says she has twin sisters as well and can relate to how mischievous they can be.
Switching classes. We did it. Yeah, we did.
That's dope. I wish I had a twin. So let's talk about what you do, right? We just looked at who you are. And sometimes those things, who you are and what you do, coincide, and sometimes they don't. So tell me about what you do currently, what led up to this point. Let's talk a little bit about that because you do quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think foundationally, my background is as an organizer. So I've always done organizing on issues of concern to our people, right? So that framing informed my work in public policy. And so a lot of what I do is in the public policy space. So I'm foundationally as an organizer, but it informs my work in the public policy space. I've worked in government. I worked in the mayor's office in the city of Chicago for a number of years. I've worked with elected officials. I've pretty much done the entire vertical, and now I do that vertical internationally. So I serve as president of an organization called Global Black, and we work on various advocacy issues on economic issues, monetary policy, climate change, environmental justice, pretty much across the board. We work on those issues, but we're working transnationally. So we have folks in South America, in the Caribbean, on the continent, in Europe, that we're working alongside on these issues. I also manage policy and research for the Movement for Black Lives, which is more domestic focused. It's hundreds of organizations also working on these issues of concern, developing policy agendas that can be pushed at the grassroots level all the way to the federal level. And then in the international space, I chair the International Working Group for the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, which is a United Nations mechanism. And that working group is comprised of people of African descent from around the world. Again, doing much of the work that, I'm sure you hear about every day on issues of concern. So I guess the interesting part of what I do is, and TeQuila, you'll know this from my early days. I was working at Austin Coming Together on the west side of Chicago, right? I was the executive director. I managed there. I was director of the Chamber of Commerce there. I was doing, the real just community-based work in the church basement somewhere. And it's all good, right? And so what's happened is those same skills and that same commitment. Now I'm just doing the work now at the international level. Yeah. For me, it's the evidence that, I always have this thing of do not despise small beginnings. Like people tend to think, there's not enough people in this meeting for me to really give my all, or this is just happening in this neighborhood. And that's never been my mentality. And so even before I was thinking about doing anything outside of the US or beyond the US or beyond Chicago, I was just committed to doing that work, even just at the neighborhood level. And I think over time, my reach has just expanded, but the principles are still there.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of risk taker, like she didn't say nothing, but she ran for mayor twice in the city of Chicago. Okay. Like that's not a small feat. And with people saying, maybe you need to start at the aldermanic level. You know what I mean? Like literally trying to knock her out of her seat and put her in her place. Right. And she like, nah, we not. And that last run,
oh my goodness.
She gave him a run. Okay, listen. Gave him a run for their money. People were scared. They was like, oh my gosh, she's really gonna win this thing, right? So, I have been privy for the past decade to your growth, right? And I can go on and on to your greatness and how dope you are. And it really just touched me when you said, I'm putting it in my own words, like, don't turn your nose up to small beginnings.
Yeah.
A lot of people do, even when inviting them to the show. That's why I'm like, you don't even realize who's on this show, right? Who's come on this show. And that speaks a lot about the relationships that I've built over time and how people respect. And those who don't necessarily know me, like, well, you don't have millions of people. Not now, but if you know my history and how I build big things out of nothing, you probably wouldn't do that. You probably wouldn't say that. So again, I thank you for being here, both of you guys for being here. And in closing, just because we're closing out of this segment, but don't think I'm not going to come back to that conversation and as it pertains to marriage and family and all of that, because that's juicy. I do want to close this segment out with asking, how do you define success?
Yeah, so, I define success at a level of, my definition of success is to be able to live in alignment where your inner, I call it my chi, but that inner voice is in alignment with your actions, your thoughts, your actions are in alignment with your principles, right? So because, it really depends on the person. I think being successful is having peace, right? Because your peace comes from that alignment, right? Thoughts, spirit, heart, actions, all in alignment, you have a level of peace. And so I think success for me is my level of peace. And do I have that peace? That's how I define it. That's the only criteria.
I felt myself floating when you said it, because that's the same with me, right? And that has changed so much for me personally over the past decade. You know, when I first started out on my ventures of leaving corporate and I'm going to do my own thing, I had one idea in mind, right? But as I continue to evolve and be aligned with who I truly am, getting in touch with my most authentic self, not who society said I was, not who my parents said I was, not trying to prove something to anyone, the more it became about my peace of mind, right? So I absolutely love that. We're going to break to commercial and then come back and continue with our heart-to-heart segment.
Key Virtual Support Solutions matches you with highly qualified, pre-vetted entry to executive level talent for your business or personal needs. We can support you or your team with administrative, sales, customer service, or operation needs. The process is simple and we can match you within 72 hours. Call 217-212-4367 or visit our website at keysupportsolutions.com to learn more.
Yes, yes, yes. And do not forget to share this out. Subscribe to our channel. You can listen to us on iHeart, Spotify, and all those good things if you don't like viewing or if you're just driving, cruising along. But make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook fan page, and all that good stuff. All right, let's get back to the show. Okay, guys, you know what? My daughter calls every single time I do a podcast. I'm starting to think it's intentional. Every single time. I'm looking at like, who's calling me? It's always her. I'm starting to think that is on purpose. But speaking of peace of mind, you guys, you just heard that Key Virtual Support Solutions can definitely help you if you need support. Look, if you are a busy executive or if you got a lot going on in your personal life, we can help you get that together. And in order to, with one of our virtual assistants, just make sure to visit our site at keysupportsolutions.com. And one of our trusty talent specialists can help you get started. All right. So I want to go ahead, Shay, and you know, I say self-made. That's been real controversial. When I say that word, like, no, God help me. I get it. When I say it, I'm saying, you know, like Kylie Jenner, they said one of the youngest self-made billionaires. She ain't self-made. She was made for money.
Right.
She had people throwing out investments, a lot of it, right? So when I say self-made, I'm saying off faith, the faith that you have. I'm saying off your intelligence, your resourcefulness, your grind. Most of us don't have access to people that can just write us a check and say, here, I got you, right? So we're building from the ground up. We have very humble beginnings, and these are the women that I feature. But I understand that we do have a village. We do have a support system. So I want to talk to you. I want to kick this portion off with talking to you about what your support system looks like, how you were able to obtain what you've obtained. What did that look like for you?
So for myself, I definitely fall into the category of self-made. So growing up, my family was always middle income family. However, my mom had MS. So my mom had MS. It was times where she couldn't work. It was times where I would be the only one working. So I didn't get any of those benefits. Pretty much put myself through school, did all of the things. And to Dr. Amara's point, I also was kind of looked at weird a lot of times because I always had these big ideas or these visions, or, you know, I'm talking to people about possibilities and they're looking at me like I'm speaking in Mandarin. You know, they don't know what I'm talking about. So I was always looked at like, what are you talking about? Or just kind of dismissed because that's not where people were then. And so what my mom did do is put me in a lot of programs, you know, extracurricular programs, my grandmother as well. So they put me in a lot of things to get skilled up, even though they couldn't give me all of the things. They put me in positions to be exposed to certain things. And I feel like with those deposits from exposures, whether it be a summer camp, whether it be a HBCU program for like early learners, it had a lot of impacts in terms of what I could do if I knew the right people. So it was always embedded in me to just ask, you know. And so for me, for a long time I didn't feel supported because I'm like, I'm trying to do this, or I'll be doing this, and just people never saw. But honestly, I started gaining support from people I never even knew. So to be honest, even now, a lot of relationships that I have are virtual. And I don't know, like I say, I don't know if it's just because I'm one of those I'm not an old millennial, but I'm not a young one either. I'm just kind of on the cusp. But, you know, with millennials, you know, the internet, Facebook, and all of these things started popping for us. Well, for me, that's where I formed a lot of relationships. So literally, even some people who I've gotten my best business advice from, or I talk to regularly, there's people I still haven't met in person. You know, we've met in like a Facebook community group, and I don't know, we just friends because we have the same mind. So I don't know, I always take from different communities. If we have a similar interest, I'm able to learn from anyone, and I'm a firm believer that anything can be learned from anyone, being it doesn't have to be a specific look or person that you have to get something from. So me just being a lifelong learner, I always take from people. So where I am today, I actually moved I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. However, I was a little bit of a military brat, so we moved around, but foundation was in Nashville. So we moved from Nashville, Tennessee, and then moved around. And then when I became of age, I was like, I'm leaving. You know, I'm trying to do some things. Y'all still talking about cows and milk and whatever. So I was like, I need to go. So long story short, I ended up moving to Atlanta maybe 2017-ish. And I didn't know anybody. Literally, somebody called me, a recruiter. And so it was maybe on a Thursday, and they're like, hey, I don't know you, but I pitched you for this job because I looked on your LinkedIn and I feel like you're like perfect for it. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And they was like, but they want to interview you. And I'm like, what? And so they're like, so basically they was taking a chance on me, and it was kind of the same. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So I did the interview, knocked it out the park. Well, he called me back and was like, they want to do a second interview, you know, and I was like, okay. So then he said, well, there's one more thing. I was like, what? He was like, well, this job is in Atlanta. Like, would you want to take it? And I was already looking to make a shift, but he was like, you want to take it? And I was like, what? So literally I got the job, and that weekend I just packed up my stuff in the car and just moved. So I stayed in an Airbnb for maybe a year because I really didn't know. I have family who's in Decatur, but I didn't know anybody here. And so the whole time that I was here, I just started making connections with people online that I didn't know. Like, hey, this is what I got going on. I'm doing this. And ultimately that became my support. So for a lot of people, they don't know that A Few Men is only like 3 or 4 years old because it's grown so big and it has such a strong presence. So they're like, how are you this $1 million brand like in 3 years? Or how have you expanded to do all of these things? And it's because I just would connect with people. Like I had no, you know, and I guess for me, it wasn't threatening because it wasn't something I was trying to take from them. I'm just trying to connect like, hey, I got this going on. You got this going on. You know, can we talk about it? I'm not trying to gain. So I'm always willing to give and share my knowledge, and it's not with you know, intention or like transactional. I'm not really with that. So I don't know. That's just become my support system. Me meeting these individuals, and then of course, you know, like this year I joined TSP, their mastermind group, which is Traffic Sales and Profit Mastermind. But outside of that, it's just been virtual connections that have just really formed into strong friendships, business relationships, and so on and so forth.
Yes, I absolutely love that, because I think that people, you know, early on I could see why people would say what I'm about to say, but now I don't understand when they like, it's just social media. Have you guys not discovered the power of these platforms right now, whether positive or negative, however you want to look at it? These platforms have power, and I completely understand. And I know that Dr. Amara Enyia can also agree with the power of building relationships virtually, right, that can be cultivated into something much, you know, bigger than that. And also it goes to her point about being in alignment with your chi, meaning why that person called and like, well, can you come to Atlanta? And you like, I'm already on my way.
Right. It was such it wasn't any question for me. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I will. You know, I put some stuff in the car. I had an apartment in Nashville. I just put it on Airbnb, and then I moved into an Airbnb up here. So I had no plan, but I was just like, let's just do it.
We all share that, where we just be like, I'm out. We're just gonna do this. We'll figure out all the logistics later. People get so stuck in they get in their own way and so stuck thinking about every detail. It's like, just jump.
Yeah. And it'll always be something to think about. So when it comes to those type of situations, again, you just have to do. So if you get into the weeds, and especially for people who are recovering perfectionists like myself, you're always going to find something. Always. So it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be a perfect time. Your best bet is just to move and do.
How liberating. I think that's a liberating space to be in as a recovering perfectionist and overachiever, is just to do it and accept, whatever quote unquote mistakes come with it. Because I'm at the point, I don't believe in failure. I don't believe in mistakes. I don't believe in none of that. Okay, here it's only lessons, right? Yep. Dr. Amara, I know that you want to chime in with this. Like, let's talk about your support system. And is there any sort of I'm sure there's agreement with what Shay said, but how has that shown up in your life as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think when you define self-made and all of the context around it, I really was thinking that the notion of knowing yourself is critical. Like, so if we're defining self-made in different ways, not in the sense that, I just created everything, right, but the importance of knowing who you are as foundational to every other thing. Because we live in a society, a world that will constantly try to define you, try to establish the parameters within which you are supposed to exist, try to determine what you should be doing, thinking, buying, achieving. And when you live in that kind of world, the best possible thing you can do for yourself is to know who you are so that you can define your life on your own terms. This has been, for me, I think it's been really important because some of the spaces I've been in, and just thinking about politics, right? Where, when I got involved in the political space, and TeQuila, you know this from the first time. I mean, it was everything from, why don't you just do alderman? How much money do you? I mean, it was all these things. And in my mind, I always believe that my characteristics are assets, right? They're things that actually qualify me to do whatever it is I'm endeavoring to do, as opposed to deficits. And the notion of someone else being able to define my trajectory is preposterous to me, right? On top of the fact that what this endeavor, at least in the political space, wasn't about me as a person, right? It was a commitment to my community, my city, and seeing what hasn't been done and not believing that we have to wait for some messiah to come down from the sky and do it for us, right?
Oops.
So, I mean, if we can just candidly and plainly, but without that sense of self, that knowledge of self, there's so many things that will ensnare you, or that will throw you off, that will take you off of your path. And I mean that in the sense, not just from someone saying, well, you should do this instead of doing that, but also knowing what your principles are so that you don't fall into the temptation to adopt principles that are harmful, or behaviors that are, to me, out of my character. So through the difficulty, because on any endeavor, there will be difficulty, even when you're in alignment, right? It doesn't mean that everything is going to be, great and perfect. You will face some extreme challenges that will cause you to question the very foundations of your being, right? And we always have a choice. So for me to be able to be tuned in enough to where I'm not going to become a shady person, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to, no matter, I've never trusted anyone who believes the end justifies the means. I don't believe that. I don't trust it. If you believe that, I know that we don't have anything in common, because process matters, right? How you do things matters. Becoming a shady person because you want to win an election or you want that job, it is fundamentally problematic to me. Knowing that about myself allowed me to navigate extremely hostile territory, and not lose who I was, and not become something different, and not cater to the lower vibrations of those who are in that space, in spite of the difficulty. And that to me is when if we're thinking about like self-made, it really is that knowledge of self that's so critical. My support system, which is tied to that, became very clear, because the adversity will really show you who's in your corner, who your support system really is. And for me, I was able to go back to the core support system, which was my family, right? First of my parents, right? I mean, it's just, I never take it for granted to have them here, because I certainly went back to them. And it was, the toughest part. I was going back. Hey, I got to come home, and they were with me every step of the way. My siblings, my extended family, my close friends, TeQuila, very well. I don't have a huge circle, and which I'm happy about, because I know that the people that I have in that circle it was a safe space. And after the challenges that I experienced, it only clarified to me who was in my corner, but it also made me even more committed to not taking those relationships for granted. It forced me to actually I needed to be a better friend, right? Self-reflection. I needed to be a better friend. I needed to show up for my people more than I was doing before, because I felt like when I needed that, I got that. And I could do better even to the people that are in my space, right? And so that's been my support network, and it's essentially helped to carry me forward in any endeavor.
Yes, I love that. And it reminds me so much of a moment earlier this year where I spoke to a group of young women at Chicago State University. And one of the things I said, one of my greatest lessons is truly understanding what my principles and my values are, because that is my North Star. That is, like you said, what helps me to navigate relationships, what helps me to navigate what I'm supposed to be doing, because I truly know who I am, right? And I think that very early on in my own life, that's why I was all over the place, because I was trying to figure out who I was. Very early, that growth was interrupted, right? Because I had to become a mother for my daughter, which meant there was no more time to develop who is TeQuila. TeQuila is Bernadette's mother, right? So I often tell people, like, I was a mother before I understood what it meant to be a woman, or the type of woman I wanted to be. So it was I had to learn the hard way. I had to get dragged a little bit, but it's okay. I value all of those lessons, right? Because I wouldn't be the woman that I am today, right? So I absolutely love this. You guys, we have 2 minutes, but I want to touch on this. What do you do for self-care? See, that looked different for everybody, but it's so important. It's so important being the women that we are, being overachievers, being perfectionists, being givers, right? How do you stop to take care of yourself? Shay?
So I like to schedule days where I'm doing absolutely nothing. Because I feel like a lot of times I'm always thinking, or always decisioning, or always, solving. So I schedule days to do absolutely nothing. I also like to take time to read, watch a show, just proactively decompress. I also schedule like monthly spas. So I might get a massage, I might go to a spa, maybe go to Jeju. That's a place here in outside of Atlanta. So I purposely might take self-care days for my body, down days for my mind. And that's kind of been my self-care. And then also just doing something that makes me happy. So it might be a purchase. A lot of times I don't always reward myself. So in the last year, I've made it a habit to reward myself, to say, oh, why you created a life, why are you not doing certain things? Because I'm like, I don't need that. And I'm like, why not? You don't have any kids. Like, you've made these decisions, so you can do. So why not do? So that's kind of been like my self-care regimen.
How often are you doing that for yourself? It could be any version of the things that you explained. Is it like monthly, weekly, daily?
So I try to do it at least once a month, where it may be me you know. So like last month I had got a little bit addicted to like body butters and all. It's so many things on Instagram. So anyways, I had bought up too many. So I didn't bought up body this and body that and da 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 da. And then like the month before that, it was candles. So I saw these candles and I was like, oh, I'm just about to, you know. So I got all of them. Don't need them, but I was like, well, this is just my wants. So that's what I do.
Yes, nice. What about you, Amara?
For me, on any day or every day, you'll find me either swimming, on my bike, long distance biking, or running, or any combination of the three. That's every day, first thing, early in the morning. So that's my self care, and I need a lot of alone time. I know it sounds funny, but I do. I need a lot of alone time. So look, I'm gonna be in the woods walking. I don't know where. I don't know where I'm going. I might find a meadow. You know, I keep a pair of shoes, running shoes in my car. One, to be able to escape if ever, you know, if I ever need to. I know these are things I think about. But yes, I keep a pair. And also because sometimes I just, you know, I see a pond, I see something, I'm just going to walk, I'll wander. And so I need a lot of that. And I recognize that about myself. So the physical activity, definitely, I do a lot of endurance activities. I'll swim for hours, bike, run. Otherwise, I just need a lot of alone time and a matcha green tea.
And throw that in there too. Right? I mean, it's so real. I didn't know. That was my big question, Shay, like around marriage was, am I going to be able to do it? Because I like spending so much time by myself. Right?
I do too.
Yeah, like,
I love it.
am I able to do this? So I married like a really quiet man who also likes to spend a lot of time by himself. And I happen to be the clingy one. So it works out. I mean, like, you know?
Perfect match.
Perfect.
Perfect match. So we're going to break over to another commercial break, but this time you guys will get a chance to, get to know Shay and Dr. Amara Enyia and some of the endeavors that are important. We have 60 seconds. We're going to go ahead and start with Shay for our commercial break. Let's go ahead and bring her up on the screen. Shay, tell us more about A Few With Men.
Yes, definitely. So, like I mentioned, A Few With Men is a wooden watch and accessory collection for men of distinction. So if you have a man in your life, and it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic, right? Just a man that you want to honor, we are that brand for you. So we have a host of products going from everything from wooden watches to wooden rings to even bracelets and other accessories. So be sure to check us out at afewwithmen.com. We are also A Few With Men on every social media platform, afewwithmen.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Before we take her off the screen, I'm going to ask you really quick. Tell us about how a person can get involved with A Little Bit Techy.
Yes. So for A Little Bit Techy, you can contact me at info@alittlebit.techy.com. Currently, I am revamping some of our courses. So what I do is I help non-technical individuals transition into tech-driven roles. So no technical skills required, meaning you don't need to code, you don't need to do anything exceptional, but show up and be yourself. I anticipate having some courses, revamp courses roll out at the end of this year. Early 2023. So be sure to email info@alittlebit.techy.com for more information.
Very good. Thank you. And now we're going to go over to Dr. Amara Enyia.
Yeah, so folks can follow me on all of the social media platforms on Twitter, IG, and also I have a public Facebook page. It's just first name, last name, on Facebook, and really to keep up with all of the things that are going on that I've been involved in for people who are interested in pretty much every topic area: community and economic development, reparations, climate, environmental justice. There's just so much happening that folks will be able to get updates on. Also on LinkedIn, a lot of my work and some of the partnerships and collaborations are there as well. I know coming up, I'll be in Senegal, in a few weeks' time, actually. And then from there, Egypt, the climate conference is happening in Egypt this year. We'll be in Geneva for the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent at the end of this year. So there's a lot happening. And if folks are following or just observing on those platforms, you'll be able to get plugged in, or I can help you get plugged in whatever your area of interest is.
Yes, perfect. So you guys make sure that you plug in. We'll make sure to have all of that information in the description area so that you can get in contact with Shay or Amara around what interests you. Okay. And also don't forget to like this page and subscribe to our channel so that we can keep going. Okay. So like this video. Yes, yes. Thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel and share it out to your network. Do not cheat your people. Okay. This is really good information. All right. Let's go ahead and get into this third segment, which I call WTF ever, which means anything go. Okay. I do want to revisit this whole marriage topic. I told y'all I was coming back in this segment. Because honestly, I feel like you guys are my kindred spirits, but I still like to have this conversation because somehow I ended up on the other side of the rainbow where at 44 years old, I'm married and now impregnated. You couldn't have told me that this was going to happen. I would have never in a million years thought that this would have happened. I was real minding my own business and real happy globe trekking, right? So I know that we really got into that with you, Shay. So I want to kick this off with you, Amara, and talk about like your sorry, had to, because I've had some great conversation with this.
Yeah,
but I know that Shay talked about it, and I know that you are really feeling some of the stuff she said. So let's talk about your dynamic, especially with you moving around. Like, is there even time? You know what I mean? Like, what does that look like for you?
It just means broader exposure. I mean. Just kidding.
No, she's not.
No, but I mean, honestly, I think, it's the same. To me, it's the same principle. So I'm very much like my gut, my chi, it really is a driving force. So I feel that applies also in that regard. If it's not there, I don't force anything. I'm kind of coasting. I think that you make time for what you want to make time for. I believe that if, I came across, an individual and that feeling, game time. Like I don't have any, like, I don't want to say hangups, but I feel very strong. I trust myself. I trust my gut. And also I'm not thinking like everything has to be perfect, and I just trust my gut. And so with that same trust, it allows me to just live my life. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't, also great.
Talk about what I want you to talk about is what were the expectations growing up for you?
Oh my goodness.
Right? What were the expectations growing up for you in an Igbo family? You understand, as a woman, and how your family feels about where you are right now.
Well, I was always the outlier. I mean, I did mention that early on. The expectations are very much, you get married. Well, you finish school, you get married, because it was always encouraged that you get your undergraduate, get even your graduate degree, and get married, have kids, and the like. So that's just a very strong cultural expectation. And so there's the time of pressure. I think it was like maybe in the 20s, in my mid 20s, where all of your peers are starting to get married, and maybe you can think, oh, okay, well, it's happening. It's around that time. Let's go. But I'm actually glad that I just was like, okay, I never felt compelled or felt like this doesn't happen. It was never something that I just had that feeling that I needed to do, right? And I feel like if I had that feeling, then I would just do it. But also I have a family. My parents have, one, they know me, two, I told you I have this twin who, married to, a fellow Nigerian, has kids. I have my nieces and nephews whom I adore. So that kind of took some of the pressure off me. So, but they're also very supportive, because at the end of the day, their thing is, you have to live with authentically and live the life that really speaks to who you are. And they're going to support that. And so even though now they weren't always that way, right? So there was a time when they were like, putting the pressure on. But I think, they've gotten, they're open. They're very open. And it's because they see us as individuals and they see who we are. And our maximizing our potential, I think, is what they want for us. They want us to live the maximized life in whatever form that takes. And so I'm grateful that they have mellowed over the years.
And look, you got 5 other siblings, right? So it's not like, like if you was an only child, that pressure may still be there. Or, if you were just the only girl child or woman child, it would be a different kind of pressure. Shay, do you feel pressure from your family? Lucy said, Dr. Amara, you're the cool, rich one.
Yes. I love it. Best role in the world.
That is, my story is similar, right? I think within the last few years, I think the pressure has gone down. Our setup is a little bit different because I'm the oldest of 3, but none of us have children. And my youngest sister is married. So I have one younger sister and one brother, and my sister's been married about a year now, but none of us have kids. Now we do have dogs, and I think that's been the supplement where we're like, well, you take care of the grandpuppy. And honestly, my grandparents have been like, okay with that. Cause they're like, okay, we take the dog out, and that's been their grandchild. And now my sister has a dog, and that's the other grandchild. So, I don't know. I haven't felt the pressure like I did. I know my grandparents, they came to Atlanta a few months ago, and they stayed with me in my house for a while. And so my granny was like, well, to be honest, it was so random, but she was like, well, to be honest, you ain't got time for no man anyways. Like I guess she was making peace with it. She was like, you got bigger fish to fry, so she just said that out loud so I could hear. And I was like, yeah. And so she was like, that ain't even on the timeline. Like she just kept going. So for me, I feel like they're fine with it, where they've made peace with it. Like, okay, she might not, but she's on a mission and she's taking care of what she feels is the best interest to her, which is, myself. So, I think they just have been okay with it, but they don't have other grandchildren. But for whatever reason, they also don't feel pressure where they're like, we need to see grandkids. They just don't. So it's worked.
That's good. That there is no pressure. I love that, Amara, like you said, your parents have just come to the point like, well, look, listen, this just may be it. Let's go ahead and embrace it. It's all good. We love her for who she is. But can we get into this real quick about the mindsets? Shay, you touched on it earlier about like the how the landscape of dating and the mindset of men and women have really kind of changed or evolved. I don't know if it's evolution or I don't know what to call it, but it has changed, right? It's different from what our parents may have experienced, right? I mean, don't get me started. I just feel like it's a lot of crying happening. It's like real emotional right now.
Yes.
Especially from the male side of things. It's like this battle and this challenge. And I'm so sick of these gender wars that are happening. It's like, are we really talking about whether or not I should go for a date? Or, you know what I mean? Are we really having that conversation? This is really...
I'm sorry.
That's where we are.
You see, I'm lost for words. And I'm usually not lost for words, but I'm trying to be, respectful of everyone because I don't think it's one-sided, but I do see a rise of more vocal men. And I'm like, man, like, I think y'all need some therapy or more like group support or something, right? So I ain't out there. I'm glad I got me an old schooler. I'll be all infuriated with these conversations. He's like, what are you talking about? Who's talking like this? I was like, whoa, thank God you're so disconnected from it, right? So are you seeing, Dr. Amar, are you seeing the same thing from a global perspective? Are the conversations the same with men overseas as it is with men in the US?
I mean, there will be different contexts, but I think there are similarities that are happening. I think the phenomena is, one, our access to these conversations through social media, through, people just have more access to be in those spaces. But I just don't engage. I can't even, I just don't. I don't really follow them. I can't entertain the conversation, because at the end of the day, as for me, like, balance is the key. And a lot of what is manifesting, I think, is a fundamental imbalance and a fundamental lack of understanding of self, which drives how you engage and interact with anyone external, whether man, woman, or otherwise, even non-binary, right? However you identify. And so I think what we're seeing is the results of societal influence. You're seeing these shifts that are happening, especially with how women are positioned and the level of autonomy and agency that they have, whether in the United States or elsewhere. And you're seeing also how people are responding to that, right? And I think that's what's coming out a lot in these conversations or the podcasts. I hear about these podcasts that are happening. I'm like,
and I'm like, did you hear about Kevin Sam? You like, Kevin who?
I mean, and I don't want to minimize it, because I laugh at a lot of things. I just, like, I'm too chill really for that. But it's a big deal for a lot of people. And I think, first, know yourself first, know your values. I mean, that doesn't change. Like, if you want to be in a relationship with someone, first know yourself, know your values, know who you are. Are you letting society define standards for you? Are you letting someone else tell you what value is and what value looks like, right? How do you define those things for yourselves? And then find each other. Like,
right. Exactly. So then that takes me to the point. That's why I'm like, what are these one size fits all? This is how you need to be as a woman. This is how you need to be as a man. Look, listen, I cook. You finna wash these dishes, Jay. That's just how it is, right? Like, there are certain things that my man just enjoys doing for me, right? And it falls into the traditional role of manhood. And there are things that I love doing for him, and it falls into the traditional idea of womanhood, but it's not, you gotta do this for me. So how do you guys feel about roles in relationships?
To Dr. Amara's point earlier, it does very much give low vibrational conversations. I mean, to me, all of that conversation, a lot of times it causes discourse, because they're, at least from conversations that I've seen, they're not looking, and it could be on either side, they're not really looking for a resolution or a solution or us coming together. It's, this is it because I said it. And that's not necessarily true, right? It could be a lot of things that are true at the same time. But what I will say, a lot of that conversation, at least from the men that I've seen kind of engage and kind of hold to that, are not men that I would see as a husband anyway, number one. So I can't miss what ain't for me. And I say that because when I hear that kind of rhetoric of what a man is and what he isn't, and what a woman is and what he isn't, I have grandparents who've been married 50 plus years, and I've never seen that. So gender roles for me, I won't say they don't exist, but even in how my grandparents are, very influential in my life, it was whoever got whatever done. If my grandpa cooked, which he's the better cook, he cooks. My granny might do that. And people, when I tell people that, they're like, how he cook better than her? Because it worked. And me growing up, I never questioned that. And also, both of my grandparents always worked and had really good jobs. So they were 6-figure earners before 6 figures was a thing. So they were very affluent when they were within their, generation and against their peers. But they also showed me, okay, we're a team. So she might take the trash out. He might take the trash. She might do this, da-da. So I've never seen where it's just an assignment. Now, where things were kind of shaped is my mom was very heavily influenced with, Christian doctrine and purity movement. And so how that really influenced me, which I kind of like rebelled against as I grew, was oh, this is for your husband. It kind of went back to that, this is what you should be doing. This is how you should be doing this. And it never gave me the opportunity to reflect on Shay, what she wanted, who I was, what I like, what I dislike, where I want to go, because the focus was always on the husband. So I struggled with that growing up, because I was like, this just doesn't feel right, because it went against what I saw. I saw my grandparents doing this and that and da, 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 and they're married. But then I'm growing up to where in the house with my mom, I'm going to purity school and I'm having to wear this ring and I'm under oath that I'm never do. Like, it was just a completely different dynamic. I was like, So when I see a lot of those conversations, it does take me to a place that people haven't really taken the time to know and understand themselves. Because if you're putting things in a box of what a man is and what he isn't, well, if we're honest, half the stuff that you're saying what a man should be, you not checking those boxes anyway. So like, why would you even subject yourself to that type of self-imposed trauma and then think I'm about to get with you and like be in alignment because you're the male and I'm the female and that is how it should be? So it's a lot of conversations, and I might see the conversations and I get tickled all the time, but I usually don't even engage because they are so draining and they go so left, to the point that they're almost demeaning, because now I hear this side is hurt and this side is hurt. And it is also some other things at play, right? It's economic issues at play, especially if we're talking about Black men, to where I'm in the tech space. We a few years ago, I did some research, and one of the surveys and research that came out from Deloitte was within like the next, I don't know the time frame, but it's very soon, sooner than later, maybe within the next 5 to 10 years, landscape, basically in terms of jobs, due to automation, due to COVID pushing everything, Black men will see themselves almost at the bottom in terms of having jobs. So they're already kind of like moving. And what they're saying is, if they're doing certain positions that are not paid as much, not doing da 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 da, you have this threat to where it's like, where do I belong? Where can I have my dominance? It needs to be in my household because I'm losing it everywhere else. We have, all of these other things at play. So I do feel like it's a lot of factors that are contributing, but I do feel like the solutions, those are not being posed to say, oh, why don't you go to therapy? Why don't you skill up? Why don't you do a certain things? So I don't know if those things are being positioned properly. That is one of my hopes that A Few with Men eventually does do with like the mental health space and other spaces. But it's definitely hard when I'm an advocate for men that look like myself, Black men, and it's like hell on wheels when it comes to us. We're not seen as partners and, helpmates, we're seen as slaves. It's like, well, she need to be doing this and I need to just be eating a sandwich. And it's like, why would you think of me like that when I have so much more to offer you?
And you just hit it. It's that wanting to have control somewhere when everything else is falling apart. You're losing control everywhere else, right? So this is the best place to do it, is to conquer the home, where you see on the opposite side, Black women are excelling at extraordinary paces around the world.
Yes.
Right? Like with entrepreneurship in tech spaces and politics and like everywhere we're coming up. And
even healing, right? So I know for myself, I've been in therapy like the last few years to really like unpack things, unlearn things, relearn things, understand myself. So when I do find whomever, I'm not bringing baggage and everything else to that table.
And also, I think it's important that we don't allow broader society also to define Black men, right? So when you're living in a capitalist society and then your entire value is determined by your salary from a company is wrong. It doesn't make sense. And so part of the challenge, I think, is how manhood is defined is the markers are these in a sick society that are determined to be successful or for them to have value. So, at the end of the day, balance is important. So when we talk about gender roles, but it really is balance, right? And what does that look like? Does that look like one spouse doing everything and the other doing nothing, right? And again, even in your individualized context, hey, maybe that's what it looks like for you and your partner. Maybe they love that, right? But balance is the key. And also how we define manhood, womanhood, and not allowing it to be defined in a society that, look at the foundations of the United States, right? Like, how do we use those hegemonic definitions to define ourselves, who we are to the world and who we are to each other, right? I feel like we have to reject some of those notions also.
And I agree. But then you look at someone who, may he rest in peace, but someone like a Kevin Samuels, who really did spark a lot of this conversation that we're seeing right now, right? And what he left is, he said he's the one that used capitalism as a marker to manhood. And so high value man means 6-figure man, when that isn't what aligns with most of our Black men. And to be quite honest, Black women aren't selecting husbands based on, I mean, I'm just saying, like
if we're honest, no.
We're not talking about what you see on TV. We're not talking about vixens that you see even on social media that may be promoting stuff. I'm talking about on a larger scale. I did not say to my man, what is your credit score? What you got in your bank account? How much do you have? My man is a straight blue collar man. It was all based on character. And from what I see in my circle, that's exactly how the women in my world select, are with their husbands as well. It wasn't like how much money you make. So I think that here's a Black man that's saying this is what defines a high value man, right? But then in the same breath, he's saying he's also commodifying women and saying, once you hit a certain age, you have absolutely no value because you can't even produce babies anymore. And that's all a man really wants you for. If you don't look good and you can't produce babies, then what value are you to us, right? So he did that. He did a lot of that, and people are now, he's gone, and they running all over the place like, oh my God, I'm a high value man, and you're a low value woman, and you got kids, so I don't want you no more. Men were not talking like that before Kevin Samuels.
No, and it's a show, it's a YouTube show that I watched that it's a single show. And you see some of the men to where they can't even pronounce or articulate some of the things that he said, and they're usually what he said verbatim. So they're like, "Yeah, I'm a high value man," because they stuttering and trying to. And I'm like, "Are you reading the script? Like, what do you think? What do you have to offer? What are you bringing? What can you do?" But it's echoing the sentiments of someone else, and it's like, so you're making his thoughts your thoughts.
Because what do you think? It speaks to the pain. Here's one man where we can rap that is articulate, because Kevin Samuels was a very articulate and intelligent individual. The things that he said, I could take it with a grain of salt and see the truth in some of the things that he said, obviously. So I wasn't offended by anything that he said, right? At all. But when you have a bunch of hurting people that are not there intellectually and cannot truly comprehend, they're just taking little sound bites of what he's saying and then doing spinoff shows, that becomes dangerous when we're talking about defining what manhood looks like and the value of women and men to each other in a relationship, right? So, I mean, we can go on and on about this, but we got to break to a commercial. We got to
Key Virtual Support Solutions matches you with highly qualified, pre-vetted entry to executive level talent for your business or personal needs. We can support you or your team with administrative, sales, customer service, or operation needs. The process is simple, and we can match you within 72 hours. Call 217-212-4367 or visit our website at keysupportsolutions.com to learn more.
Yes. So make sure that you are sharing our segments, because there's always something to learn. There's always gems being dropped in the executive suite. Make sure that you are following and also turning on those notifications so that you are always made aware when we drop a new video. And if you're anything like me and you just like to cruise or sit back and listen to things, you can definitely check us out on Spotify and iHeart Radio. So make sure to subscribe to that. Let's go ahead and close out. Man, that 90 minutes went fast. I swear, when you having fun, it goes by so fast. But Lou said it got real. This conversation just got real, right? I mean, anytime you talk, maybe I should have just did a show on relationships, but I just be getting too mad I do. Y'all laugh and stuff. I be getting angry for real. Like my blood pressure goes up and stuff, and I'm like, I can't handle this. I can't.
And I'm used to now. I'm like, wherever the wind, wherever it falls,
I get out of there. I get out of there immediately. I found myself typing stuff and be like, TeQuila, don't do it. Just sit, right? So things definitely have shifted, but it does go back, in this last segment, I like to, close out. And I think that for me, there really this conversation really comes back to just knowing yourself, right? Whether we're talking about relationships, whether we're talking about work, whether we're talking about issues that matter to us, family, whatever, it comes back to knowing yourself, and staying true to who you are, and aligning with people that mirror that, right? So, Shay, what's your takeaway from today's conversation? What you being left with?
So what I am taking away from this conversation is having self-awareness is really a privilege, because not everyone has it. So what I'm taking away from this conversation is to continue to extend grace, because just with everything that we kind of touched on, we're walking in waters that are complex. So I think a lot of times where we are in society, people feel like we are a lot more further than what we are. And I'm like, no, we're like a few generations from slavery, or we're a few generations from this or that, to where we haven't evolved as much as we think. So I just say all that to say, I think what I take away from this conversation is just to extend grace more in any opportunity that I can, so that can continue to get me to where I want to go and where I want to be.
That sounds like a real peaceful resolution to have, for real. Like, extend grace. May you be great and keep it moving. I love it. Like, for real. Y'all, my blood was getting a lot. I was like, let's stop. Amara, what's your takeaway from today's conversation?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It's not often that you can share space with, I feel like you both are just such like minds and kindred spirits. And that's really restorative, and has just been really good. At least for me anyway, it's been really good. So I think my takeaway is, just kind of to continue to stay the course. I think being able to trust yourself, know yourself, trust yourself, and move with integrity. I think that as a basis for anything that we do will serve us well. And so I think seeing it in the business side of things, in corporate, in policy and organizing, and all of the things that we do, knowing yourself, trusting yourself above all else, and moving with integrity, I think is fundamental.
Yeah, I totally agree with both sentiments. One thing that I find to be true, and this is going to be because you guys already hit it, so I'm going to go off the wall with it, right? Like, for real, I want to say this, is that this is the 10th episode of the Executive Suite. And every single time, every single episode, what we all have in common, every woman that I spoke to, is we've all been weirdos, uniques, risk takers, people who walk to our own tunes, you know what I mean? Kind of the little rebels in our families, the big dreamers. I used to go out on adventures. Well, see, you and your sister Amara, y'all was twins, so y'all had like that telepathy thing going. I used to just drag my sister, be like, I could like manipulate her a little bit, like, this where we going. That doesn't exist. I was like, yes, it does, right? These big imaginations.
Yeah.
And I think that, there is a common thread that I'm finding with, I'm sure if I talk to men, that may be the same thing, of people who are out here living lives authentically and true to themselves. Like, they're not afraid. We're not afraid. We're fearless. And even if we are afraid, we do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I absolutely love that. And again, it's that, just like you're saying, being true to yourself, and also what you said, Shay, extending grace to people, right? Because we can get caught. I know I can. I'm going to speak for myself. Like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with people, right? What do you guys think, executives? What were some of your great takeaways from today? Leave them in the comments. Any questions that you guys may have. Do you guys have a question for anybody in this room? Like, do you guys want to pose? We got about 3 minutes. I always open it up. Like, go ahead, ask a question if you got one. Shay, you got something? If you could ask anything right now, what would it be?
So I guess I would have a question for Dr. Amara in terms of some of the policies that you work on. What would you say? So from what I was hearing with a lot of the work that you do in terms of politics, in terms of, just everything, the economy, the sustainability, just everything. How would you suggest more people who look like us get on board? And what I mean by that is even in like the last few elections, I've been wanting to be like, they need a lot of change management because people have this set idea of red and blue, this or that, da, da, da. And it's like, life is not always white and black, is gray. So what would you say would be some tactics or ways that we could get more of us involved in public policy across the board?
I would say at first, just recognizing that it affects us whether we are actively involved or not, right? So the fact that you pay taxes in this country in particular, you pay, your bills, you send your children to school, whether you're involved or not, you're going to be impacted. And so we actually have a vested interest in getting involved. I tend to steer people away from the binary that you're either Democrat or Republican. You have to be in this box or that box. Your interest should be the primary driver of how you engage in the policy or the political space. Because when you have just blanket allegiance to this box or that box, there's more of an opportunity to be taken for granted, right? Or for people to assume that that your vote or your support is just going to be there. And I think we have to move out of that. We can't get caught up in that because then we don't get the things that we actually need. And finally, I tell people to, one of the biggest things that these systems do, whether at the national level or international level, is lead people to believe that the way things are is the way they have to be. So really having the sense that the status quo does not have to be the default, that the same systems we have, we can create better systems that actually work for us. That to me is fundamental to getting people engaged, because then they start imagining how their own life will be different. That's the imperative for people to get involved, as opposed to wagging our fingers and saying, you should vote, or you should, that doesn't really work to get people motivated. But sparking that imagination about the possibilities for their lives, the possibilities for our lives as a collective, as a community, that's, I think, what gets people involved in the policy and the political space.
That's a good one. That is a good one. It made me think, like, how do you do that, though, with people that have lost hope? You understand what I mean? You know Chicago's landscape. How do you get that through to our youth who have like, what are you talking about? There is no hope. My whole life has been hell. How is this going to change anything? It never has before. We had a whole Black president. What changed in my life, right? So it's that skepticism that is very real. Right. So how do you spark? And this isn't really, you can answer it if you want to, if you have an answer, but it really is your response made me think, well, how do you sell hope to the hopeless?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And part of it, I think, is just by example. So me getting involved in politics was not because I love politics. I don't. I'm not the type, the political. But it was because of the firmness of my belief that things could be different. And then deciding that I should demonstrate my commitment and my belief, because that shows more than what I could tell anyone, right? Mm-hmm. And so to the extent that our lives serve as people will look at how you live to determine the veracity of what you say. So how I live then is the best way to give people the hope that things can be better. My refusal to not use my imagination, my refusal to kowtow to a corrupt and dysfunctional system, my refusal to give into corruption or shadiness or all those things will be a beacon for people you may never see, but they will see you. So I feel like that's the alternative. Like, hopefully your life serves as a beacon that can give hope to people that there's a different way. And that they can be part of creating the kind of life that they envision for themselves.
I love that. You got a question, Amara?
You know, I really I don't. I was gonna ask how for Shay how you got into the wood business, like wood watches, because it's very unique. At least to me, it's a unique
I
area of
love
work.
it.
I was curious about that.
So I got into wood watches primarily because with the brand A Few Woodmen, it's kind of take on A Few Good Men, and the brand pays homage to my grandfather. So my grandfather is 82, still lively as ever, still kicking, swaggy, still out here, still doing whatever. And so me being a woman, I didn't know that men's watches were heavy. I have a women's wrist. If they create a women's watch, it's for us. So in finding him a new watch, one of the things that he told me was he wasn't wearing his watches as much as he got older because they were too heavy on his wrist. And so I didn't know that was a problem area for men. I just never knew it. And so I was like, how could I get him something that he likes, still getting him a watch, but not being too heavy? And so the solution was, wooden watches. And so ours have a wood and steel element to them. So still has that durability. But that was really solving his pain point, is what drove us to wooden products for the most part.
I love it.
Yeah.
I got a question for both of y'all. What album or song is in rotation right now that keeps you pumped on a regular? Just right now. It don't got to be your favorite of all time, but right now. It could be an oldie. It could be a newbie. What you listening to, Shay?
So right now, ironically, I have Beyonce Alien Superstar on repeats. So this is from her Renaissance album. So I like it. Some people hate it, and I like it. So that's been on repeat for me.
Yeah, I asked that question. Beyonce getting some play. What you listening to, Amara?
Well, what I was listening to right before here was it was Pop Smoke, Dior. I love it. Hey, I still haven't gotten over. I've not recovered from what happened to Pop Smoke, but
yeah,
you're like before I got on here.
I didn't know like who Pop Smoke was. For real. I was like, am I getting old?
No, it just happened so fast. It was kind of like he
came
coming and yeah. So
yeah,
he
I was like,
murdered.
let me go back, because sometimes I'll hear something but not know who the artist is. But I was like, let me go back and listen. And I was like, still don't know.
Yeah. I mean, his voice, he has a very unique voice.
Yes.
That was what initially, I was like, that voice, it was so distinctive. It's something, it has a weight to it.
It does.
So yeah. Is that something you've been listening to? Is that something that you've been listening to because of current events, or is just something you were already listening to?
Yeah, I was honestly already listening.
He's good for the gym. He's good if you're going out. So
I'm on my
his voice is like one of a kind. So I definitely agree. I like Pop Smoke too. But I think where I am right now, because it is just so much heaviness. I'm not a super Beyonce fan. I'm a Rihanna fan. But what I will say with Beyonce, with this last album, is very light when you got a lot of heaviness going on. So that's why I think I'm gravitating towards it right now, because she's just having fun on it, which is what everybody needs to do, while we're having these crucial conversations every Tuesday. She just gave a fun album. So I like it.
I'm real nostalgic. I was listening to Outkast, Aquemini. Like I had to go back in time, like take me back to a time that was some of my favorite moments, right? So yeah, ladies, I had so much fun with you guys today. Did you enjoy yourself?
Absolutely.
I did.
Great.
Very good.
So much.
Thank you so much for being a part of the broadcast today. Maybe I'll have you guys on again sometime in the future. Next season, things will look a little bit different. But I definitely enjoyed speaking with you guys today, and everybody else was very engaged. I hear people, I love Pop Smoke. I enjoyed this conversation. Great insight, ladies. So this was really good. Thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, okay?
Yes, thank you. You too.
Yeah.
I will. Bye-bye. Okay. So I am going to tell you guys I had so much fun today on the Executive Suite podcast with our two guests, Amara and Shay. I'm looking forward to our future shows. We have four more, I believe, four more episodes this season before we take a break and come back next year in 2023. I would love to hear some of the feedback that you guys have had. Make sure you revisit some of the older shows. Make sure that you are subscribing to the YouTube channel or listening via Spotify. But I really had a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you guys did too. Until next time, I'll see you in a couple weeks with our upcoming guest. Let's take it away, my friend.